Some content or topics discussed could trigger a past anxiety or be sensitive or disturbing to listen to or view. Please view and listen with caution. Hi, my name is Todd Bly-Levin. I'm one of the hosts of the Walking Tall podcast, and it's our mission to help all people that are down and depressed or dealing with some sort of trauma or mental health issue to learn how to stand back up and walk tall again in their lives. Please follow us on all of our social platforms, our YouTube channel, and check out our Walking Tall movement at www.walkingtallmovement.com. Now, here's our show.
Welcome back to Walking Tall. And if you were with us last week, we spent time with the amazing Agi Semrad. It was an honor to listen to her story and learn more about the Balance Project. And her focus on mental health, both personally and professionally, was so inspirational, as was her vulnerability. Todd, you've gotten to know Agi over the course of Walking Tall and having her on the show. What did her presence do for you? What did you learn? And what were your takeaways?
Well, each time I've had an opportunity to talk with Agi, it's been just super positive. You can just feel her energy of positiveness and just the love that she is trying to push out more into our world and helping those that are in need. And it's just instant. I mean, the minute you start talking to her, you just know, like, this is someone I want to hang out with. This is a cool person. And then when she really starts breaking down, her past and what she went through, especially with being in that Hispanic culture and just, some of the racism things and things like that occurred. I didn't really, it's what we're dealing with as a society, and to hear her story on how she was walking tall and now walking tall for others with her, Balance Project. And it's just awesome. So really inspiring. And I'm really happy to have her on our team. Super bright, amazing woman. And it's just another really cool thing to have for Walking Tall.
Yeah, exactly. And we're ecstatic to have her on our team. And you, Dr. LaRosa, have gotten to know her as well. Speaking of being on our team, without giving too much away to our listeners, the two of you are working on something super special that we plan to unveil in the future at some point. But you two are professionals in the industry of mental health, but also vulnerable women and value Walking Tall. And what has it meant for you to get to know her and her expertise and the work you're doing together behind the scenes? What are you excited for getting to know Agi a little bit more?
Well, whenever I meet somebody with a similar passion, simply just to help people and do good in the world, it's inspiring to me, and it re-energizes everything that I want to keep doing. Sometimes we all get burnt out, we get tired, we get busy, overwhelmed. The day-to-day life sort of wears on all of us a little bit. And Agi re-inspired a lot of passion for me for my love of nonprofit work and grant seeking, and, just simply believing in that utopian view of the world that I think we should never, ever let go of, despite what each of our paths have brought to us. We all have suffered various things in our lives, and many of us are struggling with mental health journeys of our own. And so whenever those passions are reignited for just truly helping others with just the core goodness that Agi exudes, it's a wonderful thing. I can't tell you how happy I am that she is now in my life and in our lives, and helping us further our mission together with this movement. I think that she just exudes everything good about therapists, women, strong women. I think that her story of racism and how her, when you love your family so very much and you grow up with these beautiful, wonderful customs that just make you feel warm and loved and secure, and then the world around you is just not ready for them, makes fun of them, puts them down, segregates you, isolates you, makes you feel different, makes you feel like an outsider. That's a form of bullying. It's a form of isolation. It's what a lot of kids deal with, and it's hard. And for her to be so wonderful and transparent with us and share her journey and her struggles, I think she gave us a great gift from a whole different perspective last week. So I thank her so very much for that. Augie, if you're listening, and I hope you are, thank you.
Yeah, no, that's
Wow,
great.
well said.
Yeah,
Jeez.
exactly. You
That is
know,
awesome.
and I think at one point in last week's episode, the two of you kind of joked about becoming best friends, and it's not a surprise to me. And you know, we're also blessed on a weekly basis to have a strong woman on our team, and like yourself, Dr. LaRosa. And so I can't thank you enough, and I can't thank Augie enough, and you know, for leading Todd and I, because in many instances, you guys are the experts. And we're just the rockheads on the show and in the Walking Tall movement. So, but like you, you know, Augie has also inspired me. Like I said, I've known her for quite some time, and her philanthropic work and her passion for helping others was evident long before the Balance Project. And I just couldn't be happier and more honored for us that, you know, she's chose to sponsor our show. She's chose to join our movement. She's chose to help us out in many other ways. And so it won't be the last we hear of Augie. And I'm just so happy and to introduce the two of you to her and to the rest of the world, frankly. So like Dr. LaRosa, Augie, if you're listening, we love you and thank you. But speaking of inspirational, I think, you know, this week's guest is going to be most inspiring in so many levels. And, you know, it was not planned by any way, shape or form, Dr. LaRosa, but speaking of strong women, we're about to have another one on our show today in so many different ways. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago on Mother's Day, I announced to the world, if you will, on my LinkedIn profile, if anybody's watching, that Natalie Douglas was so kind to make herself our second ambassador, and making herself vulnerable to others and making herself become a resource within the movement on so many levels within her story, which we're about to hear. And so, yes, Natalie Douglas is about to be on our show, and her beautiful family reside in Arizona. They have 3 children, 2 of which are Natalie's stepchildren, and her third child, Ellis, is adopted. After graduating college, she met her now husband, Brent, who was a soccer goalkeeper in the MLS. But as a native Chicagoan, Natalie made the difficult decision to remain in Arizona with him. In 2017, sadly, Natalie was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and due to that disease was forced to have a hysterectomy, not allowing her to bear children. Unfortunately, during that surgery, Natalie flatlined on the operating table, requiring resuscitation, which, as any of us could imagine, just like a mirror, is an extremely traumatic experience. Like Natalie's always done, she persevered. She beat the ovarian cancer, and the couple went on to marry, her and Brent. And as they did, they decided to add to their family because of Natalie's hysterectomy. Her ability to not bear children, their only option was adoption. So in 2020, her and Brent took in a little boy by the name of Ellis, ultimately being able to adopt him here in 2023 on their 4th wedding anniversary. Ellis is about 3 years old. And as Natalie's always had, her big heart shines through here because Dr. LaRosa, as you would know, Ellis has Cornelia de Lange syndrome as well as autism, which provides the couple additional challenges themselves. Professionally, Natalie's a licensed therapist working with children like Ellis, and will soon become a BCBA. And as we'll hear here shortly, sadly, Natalie was re-diagnosed once again a few weeks ago with ovarian cancer and is on the onset of her chemotherapy. But like she's always done, I'm confident Natalie will persevere and beat the cancer once again with the help of our movement. So we're so honored to have Natalie as a part of the Walking Tall movement and on our show. And if Todd, if you don't mind, please let her in.
All right.
Ding dong. There it is. There she is. Natalie, welcome so much to the show. Which you haven't heard is I was able to kind of introduce you and just the amazing person you are, the amazing story you're about to share, your willingness to join our movement as an ambassador, and all the great things you're doing personally and professionally. So thank you for being on the show. And if you don't mind, just tell us a little bit about yourself and we'll get in your story.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Todd. Thank you, Dr. LaRosa. Thanks, Chris. I'm a little nervous.
That's okay.
So I'm Natalie. My maiden name's Kellogg. I went to high school with Chris, actually, so we've known each other quite a long time. And I am also from Chicago. In October 2014, I graduated grad school and moved to Arizona. Had no clue why I got a job here so quickly.
Mhm.
I got a job here within like a week, but apparently there's a high need for pediatric therapists in Arizona. So here we are. And I I almost moved back home to Chicago, and then I met my husband in November 2016. Actually, right before I was about to have a major surgery for endometriosis and polycystic ovarian syndrome, which I'd had like pretty much my whole like life, like college career, stuff like that. So, and for some odd reason, after that surgery, they pushed my follow-up date to January 19th, 2017. And so when I went to that follow-up date, that's when I found out that I had cancer, and here we are.
Yeah. So Natalie, obviously being a young lady as you were and kind of living in a new state and not knowing many people and whatnot, and getting cancer as you did, talk to us a little bit about what that experience was like, how you felt as you heard the news, how supportive Brent, of course, was, ultimately what that led to with your health and how that transpired. So if you don't mind, please go into it.
Yeah, so I remember I got the news, and that doctor had known me for a couple of years then. So he gave me like a huge hug, and I cried and everything. I immediately called my dad. If anybody knows me, my dad is my person. He's actually here right now because my husband was out of town in Hawaii for work for a few weeks. The lucky guy. He was in
Yeah,
Kona.
exactly. Here you are sick and he's in
I
Hawaii.
know. He was like in Kona. He saw Rob Lowe, Matthew McConaughey, David Bromstead from HGTV. He like talked to Rob Lowe, was like sitting next to him. Apparently Matthew McConaughey lives at the resort that they were at. I was like, oh, you're so how joyous for you. So my dad came out here. My dad came out here to help out. So, but yeah, so I called my dad, and then Brent and I had only been together obviously for a couple months, but I decided to call Brent, and he was super supportive. Honestly, I feel like he should have cut and run. So because Brent has 2 children. So when I met Brent, Sadie had just turned 3 and Kason had just turned 5. They're 10 and 12 now. Like, oh my gosh. Kason just graduated 6th grade on Wednesday, I think it was. Like, I can't believe it. But yeah,
Wow.
so he totally could have cut and run, but he was super supportive and there for everything. So I was kind of in shock, but I didn't really know what the plan was. So I was like, okay, let's figure this out. Like, we'll figure out the plan. This is what I have to do. So this is what I have to do.
Yeah. And what, if you don't mind, like what mentally were you going through as well, right? Like, I think we talk about various forms of, instances when we get this type of news, the different types of mental health hurdles it could provide. So what were you experiencing? And then Dr. LaRosa, I'd love to hear what you have to say as you hear Natalie, continue on.
Honestly, I was kind of in shock. I'm not 100% sure why I was in shock, because I mean, having endometriosis and PCOS, like, it was a chance that I could have had ovarian cancer anyways. But I kind of was, in shock for a little while. And then it hit me hard, and I was sad and I didn't understand. And then I was like, okay, this doesn't run in my family. Like, it doesn't run in my family. So I was like, okay, this doesn't run in my family at all. Like, how did this happen? And then I heard that they call ovarian cancer the silent killer. A lot of times you don't know you have it until it's like stage 4. And by then you're really lucky if you beat it. So, but like at that point I was like, okay, like then I was grateful. Like, I kind of went through all the feelings. Like, now I feel grateful that I had PCOS and endometriosis, because honestly, if I wouldn't have had that surgery in 2016 to clean it all out, they never would have found it. So I probably wouldn't have even been alive today. So, as weird as it sounds, I'm almost grateful for that, because like I said, they call it the silent killer. So we could have never found it.
Yeah. And Dr. LaRosa, I'm sure hearing Natalie, speak about the confusion, the shock, the sadness, et cetera, that's common in most people getting shocking news or going through traumatic experiences. So Dr. LaRosa, if you could talk a little bit about that, that'd be great.
Well, of course it is. Yes. A lot of people would tend to dissociate immediately when they hear something like that. And it's sort of, you hear it and you understand it, but you're not fully processing it emotionally. It's kind of like a barrier that people put up just to protect themselves from the rush of emotionality that comes with hard and, difficult news like that. And all the stages that you described that you went through, those are typical stages of grief. I mean, everything that you process during that time is just such a typical process for everything. And when something hit me emotionally when you were telling your story, and that is the doctor giving you the hug. I just love that, because I went through two super difficult diagnostic informational sessions with both of my parents, and the way that the doctors handle it was less than what would be desired from a person that needs emotional support at that time. So kudos to him for breaking outside of that stereotype of a doctor with boundaries and, sort of robotic like informational sharing. I like the fact that whenever people can be themselves and, step outside of a stereotype to comfort others, I always like to acknowledge and say that's the way that we should all be. But unfortunately, a lot of people are nervous and sort of with this litigious society that we live in and the number of lawsuits that go on for people in every profession, it's really hard for people to do that. So, it was brave of him to do it. And I'm sure in that moment, you felt like that doctor was on your side and there for you and truly felt for you. And that's worth so much in the healing stages and in the healing process. And, you're so strong and so young, and just looking at you, you're just so energetic and happy. And I'm sure that you bring a lot of joy to the kids that you serve. And I just want to also thank you for that, because after being a practitioner in the field for a really long time, I absolutely know how difficult it is and the level of person that it takes to do what you do. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for, despite everything that you've gone through, for being there for some of the most needy individuals on this earth, and no doubt exuding happiness and positivity, just like you are in the first 5 minutes of meeting you.
Exactly. And we'll get into your career a little bit later, Natalie, but as I was going to say, Dr. Lewis, you took the words right out of my mouth. And Natalie, as I've always known you, and as I got to know you more closely as of late, your positivity is just exuding from you as always. And so what I want to hear from you a little bit as we kind of talk about your cancer and as it transitioned and then you had to have surgery, how you were able to remain positive and while still experiencing some of those different stages of shock and grief, et cetera, because knowing you, I can imagine that you remain positive because just talking to you the other day, you're still positive, after what you just heard a couple of weeks ago. So talk to us at the early stages of how you remained positive, what you did, and as you got into surgery and what happened at that point.
So it sounds silly, but it definitely helped having the job that I have. I work with 0 to 6. So how can you not be happy when you're running around with a bunch of little kids all the time? So that definitely helped. Like, I think honestly that children could probably, this sounds cliche, but they could probably heal the world. Like Ellis gives me a hug and I'm like, okay, bad day gone. Like, this is the best day ever. So so I mean, there definitely were a lot of times where I wasn't the most positive, and I've definitely had a lot of really hard mental health struggles, especially after cancer, because like, long story short, like, I was 34. I was like, okay, I haven't had kids yet. I haven't like what the heck, like, what am I gonna do? Like, I've always wanted to be a mom, like blah, 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 like all these things going through my head. And the Live Strong Foundation paid for me to go through IVF before we scheduled my total hysterectomy. And so we had like 1 round of IVF to go through, which was a huge decision on Brent, because Brent and I we'd only been together since November 2016. And here we are in August 2017, making this decision to go through IVF together. And, you know, for him to make a decision to like donate so that we had embryos for our future, like, holy cow, like I can't believe he did that, because we hadn't even been together, like we were together for almost a year, and he was making these like hard decisions. So that gave me a little bit of hope, because I mean, IVF was really hard. Honestly, IVF was probably even harder than cancer itself sometimes. Like, I have to commend anyone who goes through IVF. Like, it's really hard on your body. And it's emotionally draining, because you're basically like pumped with like 75 million types of hormones for like a month, but so that they can like grow as many like eggs as possible, so that they can harvest them, so that you can save them and all that kind of stuff. So, but then like after I had my total hysterectomy, and I'm not sure if this is like where you were going with this or not, but, depression and anxiety comes a lot of times with having a total hysterectomy. And for me, and basically that's because like everything's gone. So like for women, if even when you go into menopause, like you have a little bit of estrogen left, and that helps balance your moods and stuff like that, or they'll put you on hormones or whatever. But when you have a total hysterectomy, so I had my total hysterectomy on, was it September 18th, 2017? And it's like, bam, menopause right away. Like, you don't ease into it like a typical woman. And so a lot of times, like, you get hit hard with like depression, anxiety, like all these different things, because all of a sudden, all these like organs that you need are gone from your body immediately. So I did pretty well with that for quite a while, and I was on hormone therapy, but the hormone therapy wasn't doing much for me, so we stopped it. And I definitely had some battles with like depression and anxiety and stuff like that. But I just kept telling myself, like, I'm alive, and I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky to be here and be able to do what I'm here to do with the children. And
Well,
you
yeah,
know,
Natalie,
like,
you said you're
especially
lucky to be
things-
alive, but you know, we missed a part of your story. You know, as you were having your hysterectomy, you know, as you kind of disclosed to me, you went through another traumatic experience, you know, in itself, and as did Brent being with you in the operating room. So if you're comfortable, would you mind sharing a little bit about what happened to you? And then Todd, I'm going to come to you. Not that you could relate to having a hysterectomy or menopause, but there are some things that I'm certain you can relate to Natalie too. So I'll turn to you here in a second. But Natalie, please tell us, if you don't mind, what happened during that procedure as well.
Yeah. So, you know, I can't even remember, because I had a hypoxic brain injury. So it wasn't the total hysterectomy. So having ovarian cancer the first time left me with an incurable bladder disease. This is probably TMI, but like, basically a healthy bladder looks like a healthy bladder. My bladder looks like super inflamed all the time. And so it's something that comes along with, it's called interstitial cystitis, and it comes along with a lot of ovarian cancer patients. So every few months I had to have a surgery like on my bladder to like clean it out and almost like reset it to help it work better. And then they would go in and it's called the pudendal nerves, but they would go in with Botox of all things and block all the nerves so that I wouldn't feel any pain or anything like that. And so the surgeries are actually fairly easy. And I was having one of those surgeries. Was it January 2019 before our wedding? Or maybe it was January 2020. It might have been January 2020. So I had one of those surgeries, and we learned that coming out of anesthesia, I have seizures. So for some odd reason, the nurses working that day, instead of pumping me full of seizure meds, kept pumping me full of morphine. So and all other kinds of stuff. And Brent's like, but she's seizing, like she needs something to help her out of like these seizures to like calm her down. Like she has a really hard time coming out of anesthesia. Like you need to stop the seizures and like get her down to like baseline and, you know, to where she's okay. And so they did that finally. And we got to my room, and Brent, you guys won't know this, but like the location of where like the hospital was down the street from Brent's office. And so a lot of times if I had these surgeries, since they were fairly easy, and it was literally like every 3 to 4 months I was having this surgery for a couple of years, up until like the last year I haven't had to have one. So Brent would typically leave and go to work and then come back when I was being released and like take me home, and I would be fine. So this time, for whatever reason, he didn't. And I'm thankful he didn't, because said he was sitting in the hospital room doing work on his computer. And all of a sudden he looked up and I was completely blue and purple. And he looked at the machine, and the machine's like, so when you're in the hospital and your oxygen gets below 90, the machines like go crazy and like are beeping, telling nurses to come and all that kind of stuff. Well, my oxygen was it was either at 40% or 30%. I can't 100% remember, but my oxygen was so low that I was turning blue and purple. So Brent like freaks out because I'm like flatlining, and he is like screaming for nurses, can't find anyone anywhere. He said he was running up and down the halls, finally finds a nurse. A whole team comes in. They don't know why the machine wasn't working, because the machines should have been working. And the first thing they ask him is, well, does she take morphine for pain? And he's like, she's not in pain. She has no oxygen right now. They started pumping me with morphine again. So then they had to, I don't know if you know what Narcan is, but Narcan is when someone ODs. So they had to pump me with Narcan. Didn't work. Had to pump me with Narcan again. So I had to have Narcan twice. Because at that point I had OD'd on opioids, because they had pumped me with so much pain medicine at that point that I OD'd, which shouldn't have happened. And so due to that, I had a hypoxic brain injury, which is where like there's no oxygen to certain parts of your brain. And it left me neurologically damaged on the right side of my body. So this must have been January 2020, because in March 2020, I had to have complete like reconstructive surgery on my arm, because I had like I could use my arm in my hand, but I couldn't feel it. So I had like my arm was completely damaged. So that was terrifying.
Yeah.
And of course, like I didn't know anything about it. And my husband now works, like he played MLS soccer, but now he works in criminal investigations. That's what his bachelor's was in. And he was smart enough, and he took like videos of me, pictures of me, like all kinds of footage. Another thing that went wrong during that surgery is they give you like an epidural for those surgeries for your anesthesia, because you heal better and it helps with the area that you're getting the surgery in. And the anesthesiologist I had already given me like the happy medicine. So I was like, ooh, like not knowing anything. And he didn't know how to give an epidural. So he poked my spine 9 times. So I had spinal damage. So so I didn't know any of this, because I had been pumped with so much medicine that like I didn't know what was going on. Like Brent took me home, and I thought everything was fine. And so he didn't tell me till a few days later what happened. And then we called my dad, called lawyers. We tried to file a malpractice lawsuit, but apparently with malpractice lawsuits, they only pick them up if you die, which is crazy to me, because so many people get severely injured due to malpractice. And the crazy thing is that the anesthesiologist wrote off all my bills. And the doctor who had been my doctor for quite a few years quit
Oh.
after what happened to me. So I had to deal with all of that, and that was really hard because we were trying to figure all that stuff out. And I went through therapy for a while because they wanted to get everything documented and how I was feeling and how I was doing. And so that was a pretty traumatic experience.
But Natalie, I bet you still stayed positive during all that, knowing you. And Todd,
Honestly, I probably did, but I definitely have had like ebbs and flows. Like I feel like I try really hard to like plow through things and stuff and stay positive, but you definitely, I mean, as all of you know, like you definitely, the real emotions hit. And sometimes when you get sad or you get worried or you get anxious, it's hard to pull yourself out of that sometimes.
Yeah, Todd, and well, I joked before Natalie got in that part of her story, you can't understand a hysterectomy or anything of that sort, but you can relate to the ebbs and flows of emotions and the things of that sort that you inevitably experience, as do I, as do we all. So talk to us a little bit about how you're feeling. I saw you kind of gasp a few times, and how are you doing hearing all this about Natalie? And we're not even halfway done.
Oh, well, I mean, first of all, Natalie, like your personality right now, I mean, it just exuberates. Like it's just love, it's strength, it's fun. In terms of how your total positive outlook on life and your perseverance to just continue to move forward is amazing. It's inspirational. And you're 5 foot nothing. And but you're giving back really so much to these youth, that are in need, and you're like the perfect saint. You're the perfect person to be working with all these special people that we have in our world. And, learning, I'm angry, that's probably one emotion. I'm angry that happened to you. And I'm angry that there wasn't attention to their job and the details, right? And I think that's a lesson big time, with no matter what you're going through, especially something that you've been through, unfortunately, to always make sure that there's an attention to detail, and that every single time that you're on an operating table, no matter how severe or easy is what it may be, something could really go wrong. And that's a big lesson. But your husband too, what a guy. Like seriously, I'd love to shake his hand one day. He's a true inspiration to, I think, any man, any person. It just sounds like he's got just this huge heart. He knew what he was taking on, and he did it for you, and because he loves you. And that's just a super amazing tale of love right there. So hats off to him as well.
Yeah, he makes me want to be a better husband or a better man in general. And
Awesome.
but the couple itself, Natalie, you and Brent are amazing in so many levels. You just explained a couple now, but not only did your story stop, with that, as you just explained, but inevitably because of those surgeries and whatnot, you weren't able to have children yourself, as you mentioned, and you were always aspiring to be a mom of your own, and that led your situation led Ellis into your life. And so if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about how that came to be, who he is, and then Dr. LaRosa, obviously you're going to have so much to contribute here, as you learn about Ellis as well. I'm really excited, Todd, for you and I to kind of sit back and let Natalie and Dr. LaRosa kind of go back and forth about Ellis and all the work they do together for children like him. So Natalie, please, how did Ellis come into your life?
Yeah. So, well, a funny note about my husband is he has RBF. So you would laugh so hard if you met him, because you would not, like, when you meet him, you would think he's super angry, but he's like inside, he's definitely like a big giant teddy bear, but he has like this like super stoic,
right, so
I wear all my
what's
emotions
RBF?
on my sleeve all the time, and he's like,
What's RBF for some of those that don't know, including myself?
I don't know, am I allowed to say that on camera?
Resting bitch face, is that what it is?
Yes.
Oh God, I thought it. Okay, Todd, hear me out, Dr. LaRosa. I thought it was a legitimate medical term that was way over my head. And I'm
Nope.
like,
Yeah, I was waiting for Dr. LaRosa to give an explanation.
yeah,
Yeah,
no.
Dr. LaRosa.
It took me a minute because
Yeah.
I went through the files. I'm like, it's not familiar. And then I just as you were mimicking his face, I knew what you were talking about.
All right, so now we got it. So now that we established Brent has RBF, but he has a heart of gold. How did Ellis come into your life? That's so great.
So we decided to, so when I started, so my master's is actually in early intervention therapy, and that's what brought me to ABA, early intervention therapy, and why I'm back in grad school to become a BCBA. But anyway, so when I worked in Arizona early intervention therapy, like 90% of my caseload was foster babies that needed to be adopted. Like I know there's a huge need everywhere, but really in Arizona, there's a really huge need. Like drugs are really prevalent here. Like the border's really close. Like there's a lot of reservations here. There's just a huge need. So we decided to become foster parents. And this was in 2020, because we went through all of our foster classes during like lockdown and stuff, because what are you going to do? They're all on Zoom. Might as well get our foster license while we're sitting here doing nothing. So we decided to become foster parents, and we knew it would be hard. Well, actually, let's back this up. So we actually had a failed adoption. When did they contact? So January 2019, I got contacted by a family that I used to do therapy with, and they had a teen niece who was pregnant, who was due in March, and she wanted someone to adopt her baby. And so we hired lawyers, like we met with them, like took her out to dinner, got to know her, like spent time with her. We clicked right away. She loved us. She was like, I think you're the who's supposed to be my baby's parents. Like, I want you in the labor and delivery room. Like, she was going to come to our wedding because she thought it would be beautiful to see like her baby's parents get married, like blah, 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 blah. And honestly, like she basically blew smoke up our asses. So basically she ended up using us to have the payments paid for the dad's rights to get signed away. And 2 weeks before our wedding, the family contacted us. So we like, we're going to forego a honeymoon, everything. Cause we were like, we're going to have a baby. Like, this is amazing. And 2 weeks before our wedding, she ran away. So that was, we had a failed adoption. So then we got married. We decided to go on a honeymoon. So we went on a honeymoon, waited a little while, like we're married for a little bit, which I mean, being married when, you know, Brent had 2 children was a little bit different. Like you don't have the typical like honeymoon phase or anything because you still have kids around. And so we decided to become foster parents, and we knew it'd be hard, but we didn't know it'd be as hard as like Ellis's case was. So Ellis came to us on November 10th, 2020, and he was 3 months old, super tiny little guy, he was 7 pounds. And he, we didn't know his whole story, but we were super excited to have him. And obviously we didn't know if we would get to keep him forever or if he would be with us for a few months. Like that's kind of the risk you take as a foster parent if you're hoping to adopt. And so 10 days after him coming to us, so this was November 20th, 2020, he spiked a super high fever and he was not breathing correctly. So we brought him, Brent rushed him to the hospital, and he had pneumonia, E. coli in his blood, a UTI, and a kidney infection, which we thought was all due to neglect, and a lot of it was, but then some of it was due to Cornelia-de-Lange syndrome, which we didn't know that he had till later. And so with Cornelia-de-Lange syndrome, there's a lot of medical issues that they can have. So he's really tiny, like he's like wearing 18-month clothes, even though he'll be 3 in August. If you saw him, you would think he was just like a tiny little toddler. Like on the outside, he looks pretty okay. He doesn't have as many of the facial features as like typical like children with Cornelia-de-Lange syndrome have. But So he went through like a ton of medical stuff. He's had a lot of kidney surgeries because one of his kidneys doesn't work properly. He had just a ridiculous amount of surgeries. So he's had a lot of medical stuff going on, tons of therapies. The foster case was really hard because his bio mom, who we actually are really lucky and have a positive relationship with today, which typically doesn't happen. His case wasn't due to drugs. It was due to his mom has mental health issues and special needs herself. So she just couldn't take care of him. So our case lasted like so long and so long and so long and so long, but like they had to give her like every opportunity they possibly could to parent, but she couldn't remember how to change a diaper, like during bio visit. She couldn't remember, like it was crazy. So, long story short, it was a very long case. It was very emotional. We went back and forth on what to do if we wanted a relationship with her, if we didn't want a relationship with her. And so finally we were hitting the end of the case and we were going to go to trial. And she approached Brent because she used to come to Ellis's speech therapies at the children's hospital. And so she approached Brent and was like, hey, like, I finally realized if I go to trial, like, I'm never going to see my son again. But if I sign an adoption agreement with you guys, then I'll actually have a chance to see him. So we formulated an adoption agreement where she can see him quarterly, but we actually let her see him more than that. Like we'll meet up like once a month. Like I just met her last week at the splash pad and she got to play with him and stuff. And I'll send her pictures, like I'll text her pictures and stuff like that. And but it was a really, really long emotional, grueling process. And he was going through so much medically, and then he got his autism diagnosis. And so we were working on like all his therapies and all of his medical appointments, because he has like a neurologist, a cardiologist, a endocrinologist, because he'll probably be on growth hormones eventually. He has speech, PT, OT, feeding therapy. Like, I mean, now that he's 2.5, he's turned a corner, he's doing really well, but like the first 2 years of his life were really hard. Like he would, all of a sudden he would spike a fever. Anytime he would spike a fever, anytime he spikes a fever, we have to immediately take him to the hospital anyways, because it could be a kidney infection, which could be fatal to him. So anytime he would spike a fever, we would have to take him to the hospital, and he could go from like fine to like massive kidney infection within like the drop of a hat. And then I'm in the hospital with him for 4 days. So it was like a crazy experience. And then like you're fighting with the state and you have all these caseworkers and everything else. And it definitely was super crazy, but it ended up having a really happy ending. And Chris knows this, but when we got our adoption date was February 8th, 2023. So we just recently adopted him, but February 8th is our wedding anniversary. So we got to adopt him on our wedding anniversary, which is really cool. So it made like the whole journey worth it, because it made that date like even more special.
I got goosebumps. I don't know about you, Dr. LaRosa or Todd. I see you clapping. And but Dr. LaRosa, talk to us a little bit about what you may know, hearing Ellis's story, and Natalie, chime in. I want to hear you two go back and forth, like kind of educate us a little bit and our listeners about what Ellis is going through, what you know of each other's work. We're going to sit back and let you two run it for a little bit. So have at it.
I just want to backtrack for a minute. And Natalie, the flood of emotions that I felt when you just told that story, I have to pull myself together for just one moment here, because not only do I feel for you as a woman, as a mother, I feel such anger, for everything that you went through, all of it, the malpractice, the ineptitude of the staff, the inability to listen to the patient, the lack of empathy on the part of the first young lady who you were trying to plan the adoption with, the blatant disrespect and disregard for you and your husband as human beings going through something and trying to go through a valid process, your diagnoses, everything. You know, when my parents were mistreated in the medical system and, you know, both of them died due to situations of malpractice, but even that situation didn't lead to anything that was legally viable. My mother died at 72, and they said that the normal age of death in the United States was really just give or take a few years from that. So the case wouldn't be worth much to them, so nobody would take it. And I thought, my mother is dead, you know, and I'm so sorry that it's not worth anything monetarily to you, but it was the principle. You know, I didn't want any money. I didn't care about it. I wanted somebody to validate what her life was worth, you know, and so this happens all too often, and it's just infuriating at every possible level, you know, and then you say you had to fight with the state and you had to go through things for Ellis and the adoption, and that's true. My friend also is going through a process of adopting 3 children with special needs, and so I hear from her quite often how it drags on and how absolutely difficult it is. But you always do the right thing. You know, you're planning visits with his birth mom. You're all around. You're just such an upstanding, you know, wonderful, wonderful person. And if you ever need an advocate, boy, I'll write letters and fight for anything that you need. And don't hesitate to reach out, because I don't have any room for dismissiveness and some of the blatant disregard that people are put through in life is just so unfair. You don't have to do it alone. We're here for you, you know, and sometimes people give up. You know, I go through things where I say, wow, you know, if I wasn't the educated, informed person that I was in my field and what I do, I wouldn't have known this. I wouldn't have known to fight for my child or to do X, Y, or Z, or to challenge X, Y, or Z. I wouldn't have known. And it makes me sad, you know, how many people are out there that are not equipped with this knowledge and that don't know how to take the right steps to fight for what's right in their lives. I see it all around us, you know, people who maybe are from lower socioeconomic, you know, statuses, or people, you know, where English is not their first language, or any variety of circumstances. They might not know all of this information and have the ability to fight for what's fair to them. And that really does just make me very, very sad. So, you know, as a person who's just a general advocate for what's right, I just want you to know that you persevering through all of that story and the way that you handled it, it's probably just a snippet of the strength and the character that you possess. And so, you know, just have to say that's just a testament to you. And I know sometimes it gets you down, and I'm sure that there's plenty of times where you just want to cry in the shower and you just want to, you know, fold up and, you know, let it all out. And that is just a necessary part of this process. You can't be positive all the time, you know, but you're just absolutely adorable. And, you know, honestly, to know you is just to love you instantly. So.
There it is, Todd, her saying, I love it. Yeah, that's Dr. Vanetta's tagline. And it's true, Natalie, like we love you, of course. And Todd, you know, real quick, how are you feeling? And, you know, we still have a little bit more to share.
I'm sorry, I didn't get into.
Yeah, that's okay. Let Todd go ahead for a
Ellis.
quick second. Why don't you chime in, and then Dr. Rosa, I'll give it back to you, and then you and Natalie can have at it.
I mean, honestly, I'm just floored. And it's it's like one more step of just perseverance and strength. And like, you know, like Dr. LaRosa just said, though, you know, there's a time when your strength, your husband's strength, all of our strength becomes just too much. And we need to just take our shields off. We need to take that armor off and be vulnerable. And I, you know, I really appreciate you sharing your story of vulnerability, because your story could end up being someone else's survival guide. And we've talked about that before. And just the way that Dr. LaRosa is also saying, you know, just talking about education, and it's a legacy of knowledge that you're just passing down, or hopefully we're getting this out to everybody, but your strength is just truly inspirational. So just
Yeah.
keep going. That's awesome.
Yeah. Natalie, a little bit, tell us a little bit more about Ellis. I know you talked a little bit about, what he has going on, but you and Dr. LaRosa can certainly relate better than Todd or I. So, let's talk a little bit about the work that it takes for you to parent him and some of those things. And Dr. Rosa, please chime in. And then please talk about your two passions and your careers. I know, Natalie, you also mentioned you're about to become a BCBA, and I've been on some text threads with the both of you, Dr. LaRosa and Natalie, like, hey, this, and I have no idea what the two of you are speaking about, but I know it's good work. So please, yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, so well, obviously Ellis has all his therapies. He's not 3 yet, so he's in early intervention therapy. We've been trying to get him into ABA, which is applied behavior analysis therapy, but it's really hard. There's a ton of waiting lists here. We've been on waiting lists since like September. So I don't know. He's doing pretty good. He's doing pretty good at daycare. The biggest challenge for us, honestly, I don't know if we have huge challenges with him, because I'm not tuning my own horn, because I'm pretty humble and typically do not see anything in me that others see. That's something that I'm working on. But I think having a therapist as a mom has been helpful for him. Like, it's what he needs. So everything he needs, like, we kind of work on. And like, even though he's in speech therapy and everyone else can't understand what he says, like, I know what he's saying. I can understand like what he wants and stuff. But working on a lot of functional communication with him. And I mean, most of his like typical children with autism that have like crazy, that could have, I mean, they could either have like mild behaviors or like really severe behaviors. Like, his are more on the mild side. Like, he'll have like the typical 2-year-old temper tantrums, or he won't want to eat something and he'll throw his food. Like, his stuff, the things going on with him, I think are more medically complex than they are behaviorally, with his autism diagnosis. He does script and he does STEM, but he's doing pretty well. So he, like I said, once he hit 2.5, he kind of really turned a corner. So he's the cutest little thing ever. I mean, I'm not just saying that just because he's my son, but
I've seen pictures. I concur.
Yeah, he's super social, super goofy. Like, if he does get into ABA therapy, or if he ends up going to special ed, or if he gets in developmental preschool or anything, they're going to love him. Like, at daycare, he's like their favorite child, because he's been through so much. I mean, gosh, in 2 years of life, he's had just as many, if not more, surgeries than I've had. And that's crazy to me. Like, he's 2.5, he's just been through so much, but he's just like pure joy. He's so happy and social. I mean, he definitely like flips the script when it comes to like children with Cornelia-de-Lange syndrome and children with autism. I have met quite a few children that are really social, but like, he is like the most social child I've ever met that has an autism diagnosis. Like, he loves everybody.
I wonder where he's learning all this strength
Yeah,
from.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
And-
anybody
and-
know why?
Your kindred soul.
Yeah, and Dr. LaRosa, I want to hear what you have to say, but quick, Natalie, you said something, obviously you said something that kind of struck me, that you don't often see in yourself with others seeing you. And I want to just encourage you, please, like, know how amazing you are, know how strong you are, and know how much you're loved, not only by your family, but by us and by people who are going to listen to this. So please start seeing some more in yourself. You're pretty special in many ways. So Dr. LaRosa, hearing a little bit about Ellis, I'm sure you got tingles and you wanted to give Ellis a big hug. But, and Natalie, you're about to become a BCBA. So, talk a little bit about what that process is like now, or Dr. LaRosa, what Natalie's going through, or how you can even help her accomplish that goal.
Well, this whole time, as Natalie has been talking, the only thing that's been going through my mind is, how can I help? How can I help? And I'm devising a plan in my mind during this whole thing. And, that's my nature as it is. But, I want to be there, to help you through this journey, however I possibly can, and to talk a little bit about Ellis, what I just know briefly about Cornelia de Lange syndrome is what you said already. It's a genetic syndrome. It's a growth disorder predominantly, and a lot of those it often comes with intellectual disability and a variety of things. And when we spoke to Amir, I talked about a process of neural pruning. Remember when we
Yes.
talked about the process of neural pruning of synapses? Well, oh my goodness. No, I didn't just forget.
That's okay. Neural pruning you were speaking about when speaking with Amir.
It was a major researcher who does a lot of research on this, Simon Baron Cohen. Okay, there it is. There's tons of articles about this, and the process when a baby is, born, and those early stages of life, there's a process of neural pruning. And if that there are some theories that say that there's a relationship to autism if the pruning process is not completed or is not doesn't go as planned, so to speak. So the fact that he ended up with an autism diagnosis somehow, could be related to the growth process or lack thereof related to the Cornelia de Lange. It's very interesting because it's a disorder that's diagnosed behaviorally at this point, although there are some genetic tests that are done, for autism. But predominantly the DSM characterizes a whole bunch of behaviors that if a person displays, then they may receive a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder levels 1, 2, or 3. Now, the problem that you talk about in terms of the wait lists is a problem that is just everybody is seeing all over the United States. And it's a shame because there's also a ton of research to show that early intervention is key. And prognosis is greatly improved when a child has access to applied behavior analysis in the early intervention stages. The earlier the diagnosis, the better it is if you start the treatment that they need right away. And ABA is a proven scientifically based treatment for a variety of behaviors, but very successful for children on the autism spectrum. So he is super lucky to have a trained mom and, someone who's really providing him with that support. And that makes me very happy for him. And, he's no doubt sounds like just one of those kids that constantly is going to make you smile. And like you said before, one hug will just melt away all the troubles of the world. So, God certainly blessed you with him and your stepchildren and your husband as well. And now how I can help you. Wow. I'm not licensed in Arizona. I
say this and I meant this, as I said, I've been fortunate enough to see the two of you have some exchanges back and forth on text messaging and just mentoring, and all the things this conversation has already taught me. I can't imagine, Natalie, how you're feeling, just listening to this behind the scenes and being a part of it. But, your story hasn't ended. And, you revealed some things to me a week or so ago that really broke my heart. Just knowing you and getting to know who you are and the positive light that you shine on the world in all things you do and who you are as a mom and how passionate you are about just life in general. But if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about the news you just received and what's going on with you currently.
Yeah. So, oh God, I'm gonna cry.
Okay. And you don't have to speak about it if you don't want to.
Yeah.
No. So, a couple weeks ago, I was re-diagnosed with ovarian cancer. So I started chemo on Monday. And so here we are. So you're in my bedroom because I'm living in my bed mostly. Yeah, so the course of treatment is I am on oral chemo to help hopefully mitigate it and help get rid of it. And then we'll scan and see how things are going. And the plan is to go through chemo, and I am done with my grad cert in applied behavior analysis in June. So I figured I'll just plow through chemo, plow through school, and then hopefully keep going and study for that exam. But yeah,
Okay.
this one's been really hard. I've been having a hard time with this one because like last night, if you want to talk about vulnerability, but last night I was getting really sick. And so I just like burst into tears and my dad was sleeping. So I just went and crawled into bed with my dad and he just hugged me
Mm.
for a little while. And he's like, and honestly, like I was like, Dad, I don't want to go through this again. He's like, I know, babe. He's like, but you have to. He's like, you can do this. And so I just have to remember that I can do this and I have to do this and to be Ellis's mom and to help the children I want to help and everything else. Like I have to do this. I have to beat this. I mean, the hard part about ovarian cancer is it can come back. So you can have a total hysterectomy, like have no ovaries, no uterus, no nothing like I do.
Mhm.
And it can come back. So the thing that kind of stinks too is the BRCA gene that is the ovarian cancer gene is also the same gene as breast cancer. So there is a possibility for that in the future, but we will tackle that when we have to. So here we are. So
I'm so sorry.
I've had kind of a rough couple weeks. I definitely have not been my typical happy, positive self.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that just shows like the human spirit, you know. I mean, sometimes we have to let ourselves feel those feelings. And I think one thing that like I struggle with is if I'm not plowing through and I'm not strong and I'm not happy and positive all the time and I'm not cheering on others and blah, 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 then I'm doing like a disservice. And I need to, and like I'm 40, but I have like struggled with that my whole life. Like I need to realize that it's okay to feel your feelings. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be frustrated. It's okay to be annoyed. It's okay to, you know, all of that. So
Can I
I
tell you
mean, I
something else
definitely
that's
exhibit
okay?
those. I'm from Chicago, so I definitely exhibit my feelings. But
Hey,
when it
can I
comes
tell you
to like
something else
my
that's okay to be?
feelings,
Can I tell you something okay to be?
yeah.
Selfish. And I think you need to find a little bit of that in yourself too. And I'm so happy to hear you're taking care of yourself now. And when you revealed that, you know, the re-diagnosis to me, my heart broke and I just couldn't even speak. You know, I've been so excited to get to re-know you and learn your story. And never did I imagine, you know, in the short time we've become close that it would turn back to this. But you know, timing is everything. And now you have a whole movement on your side. And and it's reality, you know, we're with you in so many ways. I can't even explain. And Todd, if you don't mind, you know, you've gotten to know Natalie a little bit and, you know, hearing her story now as we kind of culminate it and wish, you know, obviously you're going to be behind her the entire way. How are you feeling and what are you thinking?
I mean, I just wish that I could somehow transport every ounce of strength that I have and just put it into your soul. And you're happiest. You just said it when you almost your hair's on fire and you're helping people and you're smiling and you got lots to do and don't stop. This is just another barrier that you've had, and we're gonna hurdle this. You're gonna jump over it and you're gonna run again and we're gonna kick this thing's ass. And that's the mentality that you have, and you do it in such an amazing, inspirational, fun, crazy way that you're just helping all these people. And I just pray that every angel from above is wrapping their wings around you right now and just giving you every ounce of strength that God has. And I'm a big believer, but we're here for you. You need your time, but just stay strong. Just internally keep going, keep standing up, live life, have fun, keep that smile on your face. I mean, it's just absolutely beautiful. It's contagious. And And I pray for your husband too. You know, I mean, he seems the same way. That resting bitch face, I probably get that sometimes. I'm a big old teddy bear as well. But yeah. So
Yeah.
I think more, you know, not sad, but opportunity and strength, you know, and perseverance. Right.
I'm
Dr.
telling you,
LaRosa.
you cannot read this man's emotions. Sometimes I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, are you happy? Like even at like birthdays and stuff, I'm like, do you like what I got you? Like what? Like,
He does.
like we're just complete opposites in personality. It's really funny.
Love it. Dr. LaRosa,
Awesome.
as we kind of, get to the end of today's show, as much as I think we could stay on for hours, how are you feeling as we kind of, we'll be ending and signing off? What are some of the final thoughts you have going through your head?
Well, I wanted to praise your sweet dad and tell you I had a relationship with my dad that's very similar, and God bless him, and the relationship that you have with him is so beautiful. And I echo everything that Todd said and Chris. It's okay to feel mad and angry and not happy and not positive, and it's okay just to feel whatever you feel. And you don't have to hide it from the world, and whoever is in your life, they love you so much. It's okay to show exactly what you're feeling at every moment. You don't need the stress of trying to pretend to have an emotion that you don't have. I know how you feel about keeping busy and persevering through the toughest of times. If you need a study partner for the BCBA, I've had tons of mentees in my career who've all passed, and done really well first time around, by the way. So, I'm here to study
Shocker.
you anytime for that BCBA exam. It is not
Thank
as
you.
it is not as difficult as what people say that it is. It's challenging as it should be, but if you know the fundamentals, you're going to get through it just fine. And I don't know if Arizona has a license requirement here like New York does. If I'm able to help you and supervise you and provide some indirect hours or anything like that, just consider that done. You don't have to worry about any of that. I've been a BCBA since 2003, a BCBAD when that distinction became available, and I've worked in the field for well over 20 years. So I'm just here to share with you anything that I've ever learned and be a mentor to you in any way that I possibly can to further your love of this field and the good that you do. My God, it's needed. And for people like you to want to join it is such a gift. One of the things I love the most about teaching is finding those superstar students that end up, usually I try to recruit them to work for me, because they just shine such a bright light and they're so intelligent, and you fit right into that category. So,
Yeah.
consider me a lifelong mentor in anything that you need in this field. I will just be very much there for you, and you will beat this because the world needs you 100%. And you're just going to get through it. It's going to be hard, but you have so many friends and family members, and you can add us to that list. I know you had Chris already. Now you have Todd and I also, and
Yeah, it's
Walking tall.
yeah, exactly. And Natalie, as I've said many times to you personally and on today's show, like, my heart is broken to hear your recent status, for many reasons. But one thing that really kind of sat back to me, and I thought, well, timing is everything. And you've been so committed and so involved in the Walking Tall movement in so many ways, and have just kind of gravitated towards us. And I just couldn't feel more blessed or more honored that you've chosen to do so. But I think the timing of what's happened to you, and knowing your involvement with us and the amount of love and support we're going to send your ways, and we're going to do more to support you in other avenues down the road. But talk to us a little bit about how you came to know the walking movement, what you think about it, why you chose to become an ambassador, why you're here with us today, what you think of us. I want to hear what you think about the Walking Tall movement. So please.
Yeah. So I saw it on LinkedIn, which I need to make a whole new profile because mine got hacked and now it's gone. So I'll have to do that today. But yeah, so I saw, was it one of your posts? I think someone I knew it might have been like Steve Battisti or something. Like someone like reposted one of your posts, and I was like, this is really cool. And so I started following and started reposting your stuff, and then you and I connected, and then I just kept reposting and tagging and using the hashtag, and then you reached out and we started talking, and here we are. And I think it's a wonderful movement. I think it's something that you guys are absolutely amazing for creating. It should have been around forever ago. It's so helpful to talk about all different kinds of avenues. I mean, obviously, it started due to like the mass shooting experiences that you've had and things like that. But, I think it's just really great to bring mental health awareness to the masses and to let people know that they're not alone. I think that's the hardest thing with going through anything is I can even speak for like myself personally, like even sometimes when you have a big support system, you still feel alone. And so what your movement is doing is making sure that people know that no matter what, they are not alone, that there are support systems, there are numbers they can call, there are people they can talk to that, Todd, I just met you, but at this point, like, I feel like I could call you and talk to you about anything. Like, I think that, same with Dr. LaRosa, like, I feel like that is such an inspiration and such a beautiful thing that you guys are starting that is very rare to find this day and age. Because I know, Chris, you talked about like being selfish, but I do feel like a lot of people are more on the selfish sides these days, like with the way that the generations have grown up and with the way that things are changing and everything, like there isn't as much community. Like Chris and I talk all the time about like being kids in the 90s. Like we were kids in the 90s. We had like the best childhood ever because we had to do whatever we wanted and no one knew where we were at. But but now with social media and everything else, like I feel like mental illness is even more prevalent these days because there's so much more to worry about. And so if we can help support others and let them know that no matter what, there's a community for them, I think that's just so big and huge and impactful. And I really commemorate like all three of you for starting this and building such a beautiful movement. I also think it's really cool that it's called Walking Tall and that your logo is picking somebody up, because that's what people should be doing. Like they should be picking each other up all the time. That's what we're here for. How can you leave this earth if I don't know, I'm a big believer in if you can even help one person, like you're leaving this earth knowing that you did something.
Yeah. Well, Natalie,
you're an ambassador.
Yeah. I can't, speaking of helping, like you helped me so much today. I know you helped Todd, Dr. LaRosa. I won't speak for all of us, but you've helped the Walking Tall movement by being an ambassador, by taking interest in us, by coming on today. And, I just can't thank you enough for all you've done for us and will continue to do. But please know we're here for you, most importantly, as you kind of continue this journey, and we love you. And, before we sign off, there's usually one or two little words we ask our guests to lead us in as we tell our listeners goodbye. So Natalie, if you don't mind, please lead us in your rendition of those two words, and listeners, we'll talk to you next week.
All right. So we're going to do the Wedding Crashers, Will Ferrell, Walking Tall.
Oh, I like it. Walk tall.
Walk tall, everybody.
Mom and Meatloaf.
All right, everybody, have a great week. Walk tall.
Walk tall.
Bye, guys.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, The Balance Project. Check them out at www.thebalance-project.org. Thank you so much for being a proud supporter of the Walking Tall movement.